everyone. Hello, Pete. Hello, audience. I'm so happy to be here.
Hello.
Wednesday, it feels like Friday to me, which is a little bit weird. I still have 2 more days to work. Let's see how it goes.
I'm in New York
It's
City
mainly
right
because
now, so like every day feels I don't know if it feels like Friday, but it definitely feels awesome because I've been able to see like a ton of amazing customers and there's so much stuff to look at and the food is amazing, but it is super duper hot, unfortunately.
Oh no, yeah. The only thing is that I am not in New York City, so you missed me this time.
Oh.
But since you're talking about traveling, I have an icebreaker for you, Pete. And while we
hmm
do the icebreaker with Pete, audience, why don't you go into the chat and tell us where you're calling from? It's related to my question for Pete. So, Pete, what is like a destination on your bucket list, a place that you want to go before you die?
Um, well, people have joined us before know that I have he's a 6-year-old now, my son Mikey,
Mhm.
and we really like now that he's like of traveling age, we really like to take him places. And I think a really cool place that we want to take him. We took him to Paris this summer, but want to take him to Tokyo.
Oh, that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's like, I mean, want to do it in and of itself, but he also happens to be like he happens to be obsessed with Pokemon, so it's like a double fit there. What about you? What's your
awesome.
your destination you want to go to?
I am dying to go to Thailand. I want to go to Thailand next year for my birthday. So let's see if
Oh,
that happens. Yeah.
that sounds
Um,
amazing.
I'm about to get married. I'm gonna get married on the 26th, but my honeymoon, my in-laws are joining me for my honeymoon. So I am taking, I'm not considering that my honeymoon. So maybe I'll do my honeymoon in Thailand. Let's see.
There you go. Right,
Also, we
exactly. If the in-laws coming along, that kind of doesn't count. It's like
yeah,
honeymoon with an
yeah, that doesn't
asterisk.
count. No, no. We have people from everywhere. We have people from LA, from Seattle, Montreal,
I was just in
Charleston.
LA.
Uh,
I should have seen
oh,
you.
cool.
Bummer. Oh
There
well.
we go. All right, we are here today to talk about how to standardize your sales manager's playbook. And even though we're talking about standards, I am pretty sure that's not going to be a standard masterclass. So, audience, you're in for a treat. Pete will give you all the things that you need to know about your manager's playbook. My name is Eduardo. I am a community events manager at Modern Sales Pros. And for those of you not familiar with MSP, we are the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our modern sales pros. We are a community of 30K people, and with that amount of people helping you, I'm pretty sure no questions will be left unanswered and no problems will be left unsolved. So you have like an army of people just helping you to be successful in your career. And we do that through live sessions like this one you're about to experience. We have a robust online forum where you can go and ask questions. We have quarterly summits. We have one coming up. I'm going to put a link in the chat later today. And we also are coming back to in-person events, which is pretty exciting. So go check the Modern Sales website and check out all the events we have coming up where you can learn. My job here today is to make sure everyone is getting the most out of this event. So I have some housekeeping notes before we jump in. This event's being recorded, so you will be able to watch Pete talking about your manager's playbook over and over again. Whenever
Oh
you
God.
need the information, it will be handy. That's good, right,
Sounds
Pete?
sounds terrible.
And also, and also, the chat is wide open, and we also have a Q&A panel on your right-hand side. Please use the Q&A panel and the chat to ask me a lot of questions about the playbook. And one thing that I didn't mention about Modern Sales Pros is that we work with partners. And today we have Atrium as our sponsor. Pete, I'm going to pass the mic to you and I'm going to leave the stage. So please introduce us to the amazing things that Atrium can do. Introduce us to yourself, and then you can jump into the content. I will be watching live and taking a lot of notes for my audience later today. All right, I'll be back later for some outro notes.
Cool. Thanks, Eduardo. See you. Man, it's awesome to see everybody's where everyone's calling in from. Amanda, I'm in New York City too. I'm in Midtown. I'm right north of Penn Station right now. So hey everyone, thanks for joining us. This is a new It's a new piece of content that I haven't presented before, so take it easy on me, please. For folks who don't know, Atrium is a software company that I started. We make what we call an AI-driven sales effectiveness platform that helps sales organization improve rep performance, primarily by helping managers be, manage better through the smart application of data and now artificial intelligence. So that's us. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen here. Um, we're gonna go do our little like repeating hall of mirrors. Yay, into the future. But yeah, that's Atrium. We're gonna be talking about managerial playbooks today, which is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, kind of in the last like 12 to 18 months, and I'll kind of share a little bit with folks why that has become so topical to us at Atrium and why that's become a really big focus for us and our customers. Before we get into that, we have an offer for folks here today. Um, we're if you're if you're interested in taking a discovery conversation with the fine folks at Atrium, we'd love to send you a set of Bose noise canceling headphones. Mine are around here somewhere. I don't know where they are. Very helpful when you're walking around the streets of New York. But if you are a VP, a director of sales, a VP or director of RevOps or a CRO, I think Eduardo's going to drop the link here. We'd love to send you. We have a lot of these. We'd love to send you one as a thank you for your time in having a discovery conversation and demo with one of our lovely sales team. So this is going to be the agenda today. We're going to talk a little bit about the challenges with modern sales management and why you should really be thinking about playbooks, managerial playbooks, as being an important part of the solution for that. And then specifically, we'll talk about like how to standardize your sales management playbook. For folks who don't know me, my name is Pete Kazanji. I'm one of the founders of Atrium. I also am our CRO, although I work on a lot of stuff. Prior to Atrium, I've been doing that for about, geez Louise, like 6-ish years or so, 6 or 7 years. Prior to that, started a recruiting software company called TalentBin in like 2010 or so. And that's where I went from being like a business generalist founder with like a background in product management and product marketing to our first seller, our first sales manager, and then our first sales leader. And so TalentBin was acquired by Monster Worldwide in 2014. And then after that, I wrote a book on startup sales called Founding Sales, um, which is a lot of people will kind of look at it as like the canonical kind of startup-y sales book. And then coming out of Founding Sales, I started Modern Sales Pros and then also Atrium. So let's talk a little bit. So I think about sales stuff a little bit, just a smidge. So let's go ahead and talk about sales management playbooks and kind of like where where the need comes from that is kind of solved by that. And I think the really big thing to kind of think about is like, what is the job of the manager, right? What is the job of management? And the job of management really is to manage, is to get the highest level of performance that you can out of the human resources that you have available to you. And so in sales land, what that is like, that's if you're an AE manager, that's getting your 4, 6, 8 AEs more performant, higher attainment, higher win rates, higher ASPs, all that good stuff. And if you're an SDR manager with your 6, 8, 10, 12 maybe SDRs going into you, it's kind of the same thing. And so if you think about the way to do that, really the most effective way of doing that is through management of the people and management by metric. And a lot of times the way that like more junior managers manage when kind of like left to their own devices is kind of like as super reps, if you will. So like AE managers, like in the deals, kind of helping with deal strategy, things like that, which is fine. It's just very low leverage. And so in order to effectively manage by metric, really what you have to do is you have to be at this top of this pyramid of data driven sales management excellence, which is really all about like the interpretation and diagnosis, like reasoning against metrics that describe your team, right? And so the problem is that this is not very easy to do, especially for folks who maybe one of the jokes we like to say is that most sales management folks are like they don't come from the math department, so to speak. Because most of them come from an AE background or have they're amazing communicators and amazing empaths, right, and amazing persuaders and relationship builders, but don't necessarily come from the math department. Didn't get into sales in order to do bean counting, and so that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of value there. It just means that the learning curve is a little bit more substantial. And to kind of give you an example of what that looks like in practice, it turns out that this ends up being pretty tough for a lot of managers. And so as like a little bit of an intuition pump here, I want to kind of ask folks like, okay, cool. Like here's a single tile. Right? This is a single tile from a dashboard, single dashboard tile. What's going on in this chart? Right. It's just one tile and it's opportunities owned by rep. Looks like it's split by stage here. And so I'm not going to call in anybody in the audience, so don't worry, you don't have to freak out. But it turns out there's a lot going on, right? So there's kind of easier things like you could say, oh, okay, well, it looks like this Lizzie rep here and this Monica rep looks like they're a little bit light on ops. Okay, that's pretty obvious. Looks like Brian and Carson and Peter and Sean, they seem like they're pretty good on ops. They're pretty consistent with each other. But then if we wanted to get a little bit more detail, we might say like, oh, okay, well, what's going on with the different stages? So looks like Peter here has a little bit of a log jam in this like peach color. Oh, it looks like that's proposal, right? It's got a little bit of a log jam with respect to proposals at the bottom of the pipe. Okay, so that's a little non-obvious. Looks like Sean has a similar thing going on in security review. Okay, and meeting pending. Maybe he's got a no-show problem. And then like most kind of sophisticatedly, if we look at Lizzie here, what we can kind of see is that it really seems like she doesn't have anything that's kind of in this mid-funnel stage of manager reviews here, a pilot. Um, okay, so that's actually like a bunch of insights that we're able to derive from this. But obviously, it wasn't super easy, right? And so the reason why I wanted to rehearse that for folks is to kind of like provide an example of like why we should be empathetic to AE managers and to SDR managers, especially when you then multiply that across like dozens of tiles on a dashboard, right? And this right here is kind of the best case scenario that we offer our managers. So you can kind of see, you kind of like understand like, okay, cool, I get it, right? Like this is a lot of like needles and haystacks hunting here. I can kind of see why these managers might be like, and I'm going to close this tab, right? In fact, there's actually this really funny comic that one of our designers found a few years back that kind of characterizes like, oh, our dashboard has everything on it, right? Oh yeah, we can track all our KPIs. What's that one that's trending to 0 at the bottom? Oh, that's our measure of how well we understand all these. A lot of people are like, yep, I dig that. And so that's the first thing is like, okay, how do we figure out what the problem is? And then the next thing is like, even if we potentially can derive what the problem was, like, oh man, Lizzie's not getting anything into pilot, or oh man, Sean's getting hung in security reviews, or in this case, oh man, this SDR right here is like 58% behind schedule to hit their calls. Okay, well, even if we're able to know what the problem is or derive a problem, what do we do about it? Right? Like, what is the action that we should take? And that's like a second step of like prescribing a solution and providing recommendations. And so like that's like an even harder problem for most managers, right? So in this case, you can kind of think through like, oh, well, like what might be causing this? Like, is this rep generally low activity, right? Are they making up this deficit of calls with email? Why are they low on calls? Like, are they afraid of calling? Like a pretty common problem with SDRs. Or maybe they just like don't have enough contacts to call, right? Like, is this a CRM problem, right? Um, and so like just kind of characterizing to folks why this can be challenging, um, and how if you don't have like good swim lanes, like a good guardrails here, a playbook, if you will, you can kind of understand how managers could end up really adrift in a situation where like this is the best case scenario for them, right? And so the way to kind of think about this, the way that we kind of simplify like what managers are in the business of is really they're responsible for helping their reps create and consistently move pipeline down funnel, right? And the reason why that's super important is because most sales organizations, instead of having that nice like consistent like create advance close create advance, like this nice assembly line situation, instead you got this feast or famine situation where most of the time teams spend most of the quarter trying to close deals at the bottom of the funnel, and then on day one of the next quarter they all of a sudden realize they don't have enough pipeline, and then everyone scrambles to manufacture or pull in or otherwise inflate a pipeline that like maybe actually isn't true, and then the cycle kind of continues, and so this results in less efficient and less predictable bookings. And so the way to solve this, right, is just to on a continuous basis, not on a sprinting from like herky jerky quarterly basis, to ensure that teams are doing sufficient quantity and quality of work, right, that measured appropriately, and then ensure that managers are following the same playbook to then manage that quantity and quality of work, make sure that it's happening, and manage that funnel effectively. And so that's we're going to talk about this stuff here today in the next like 10 or so minutes, around like what does it look like to make a playbook for managers, to consistently manage. And like that's going to be the key, is like consistent. You're going to hear me say things like consistent, standardized, right, reliable, repeatable, all these sort of things, versus kind of managers making it up as they go along. And this actually, I want to share a little bit of like how we kind of keyed on this. Atrium's been around for a few years now, and only in the last like 12 months, 12 to 18 months, as we started to work with some larger organizations, did we start hearing from sales leaders like VPs of sales, CROs, et cetera. They're concerned about their managers um, managing in like disparate ways, and specifically not just like disparate ways, because it would be one thing if like the managers were managing differently but they were all like managing really effectively. It was more along the lines of, we're concerned that our managers are not managing effectively and they're not managing in a consistent fashion, largely because like looking in the mirror, Ms. CRO, Mr. VP sales, et cetera, maybe we haven't enabled them with a consistent playbook of like, here's what our operating rhythm looks like, here's what the different sets of meetings are, here's the content of those meetings, here are the metrical assets associated with them. But this was something that we started to hear again and again, and it was primarily, we heard this when we went up market, when we started talking to organizations that had like 5, 10, 20, 50 managers. It really kind of starts showing up around that 5 manager bucket, right? Like maybe 3 AE managers and 2 SDR managers, where it's like as soon as you have 2 SDR teams, it's like, hey, are they running their team meeting the same way? Or are they like forking, right? Or you got 3 different like AE meetings, 3 AE pipeline reviews or one-on-ones or what have you. It's like, oh, okay, cool. We need to make sure that this is documented and systematized here. And so that's what we heard from these folks, and we kind of talked to some of the biggest and best organizations out there, like the Boxes of the world, the LinkedIn's of the world, et cetera. And what we heard from them was that um, the most effective organizations, sales organizations, they really align their managers and then standardize on a sales management playbook, and then importantly, they embed that into their operating rhythm, right? It's not like, here's this wiki document, go ahead and look it up. It's like, no, 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 no. Here are the team meetings on the calendar. Here is the agenda in that content linked to the relevant document, agenda document, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're going to talk a little bit about like how some examples of how to go about standardizing and embedding a sales management playbook into your organization. And really what it kind of comes down to is it's all about um, just making sure that you have like declared or documented like the jobs to be done by the managers, and then how to do those jobs to be done. And so these are some examples of like components of a sales management playbook. Um, Goal monitoring is a great example of this, both on leading indicators and lagging indicators. Um, Performance management. So we can't just, to quote, I sound like a broken record, but to quote the CRO at SalesLoft, um, as managers and leaders, we are not here to admire a problem, so to speak. Like, we're here to actually performance manage. So if we see that someone is not tracking towards those goals, not just from a lagging indicator, but all the more important from a leading indicator standpoint, we need to be having conversations about those issues, right? And actually actively managing performance. Um, Sales coaching. So, looking at uh, development areas, identifying development areas, and then remediating them, like coaching them up, and then monitoring the ramp of new hires. And we actually have master classes on each of these, like prior MSP and standalone recordings. And I think maybe Eduardo might drop some of those links here in the chat. But these are like some components of what a sales management playbook might look like. And so importantly, these are all kind of like at the top of this pyramid per se, which is why, the the bummer of it is that even if you do these things at the bottom, like know what metrics to track and collect the relevant data and then build the relevant reporting, and oftentimes this is what like where operations or like a data team or what have you might might ship something like this and then declare victory. Unfortunately, that this is not where you're victorious. Doing this up here is where victory comes from, and making sure that we're actually consuming that information and actioning it in order to improve performance. So I'm going to kind of give some examples here of what that looks like in practice. And so the one kind of way to think about this is an operating cadence, um, making sure that for a given a set of topics, or within that particular topics that are a key initiative for an organization at a given point in time. Like maybe that might be a pipeline hygiene initiative in your organization, or an AE pipeline generation initiative in your organization, or it might be a calling initiative within your SDR organization. But the net there's one way to kind of think about this, and this is something that the Atrium's customer success team does with our customers, is making sure that you have accountability, results, and bird's eye view visibility into the initiatives in question. And so what kind of examples of that is like accountability? It's like, are reps doing the relevant work in order to achieve whatever that initiative was? Like maybe it's pipeline generation, maybe it's calling, maybe it's enhanced like pilot conversion or whatever. So it's like, hey, are the individual reps doing the actual work, whether SDRs or AEs? Next, are we seeing results? right? Or like the lagging indicators showing up at a per rep level, at a team level, and then what we call bird's eye. The bird's eye view is across the entire team or the entire organization. Are we seeing results at the team and org level, right? Which is of course a summation of the rep and team level. And so like an example of this might be AE prospecting. This is something that's really popular with a lot of folks these days, as marketing budgets have been kind of compressed, and maybe SDR teams have been thinned out a little bit. So in this case, if we were an organization that had um, an initiative around AE prospecting in order to with the intention of generating pipeline, right? Like we can't just do AE prospecting just for the fun of it. It's actually the purpose of is AE prospecting in order to generate more pipeline. What that might look like in this framework might be, okay, cool. We want to make sure that we have visibility, accountability, visibility on things like metrics that indicate that. So like maybe the amount of accounts that have had uh, an email sent to them or a call logged or what have you. Then what would come out of that, right? So like this is the work, so to speak, and then the output of that would be a lagging indicator, which would be the self-sourced, sales accepted opportunities that come from those AEs. And then lastly, organizationally, and so again, this would be like on a per rep basis and across on a per team basis. Then organizationally, at the VP of Ops level, the CRO level, et cetera, we would then be looking across and saying on a team by team basis, and then in an aggregate basis across the entire organization, what is the total number of sales accepted ops that are coming out of that? Right. And so this is just like, and so then you can imagine this being applied across a variety of initiatives. So like maybe in the AE team, this quarter we're focused on prospecting metrics or prospecting. Maybe on the SDR team we're focused on calling, or maybe on the SDR team we're focused on more distinctly penetrating a set of key accounts, right, or named accounts or whatever it is, right? You don't want to do too many initiatives concurrently, but you can imagine then applying this same approach on those various initiatives, and then rolling that into accountability, results, and a bird's eye view there. And so what this kind of comes down to is making sure that you have the right views or right metrical assets at the right time for the right audience, and those can be a variety of different views there. And so um, the last kind of thing to kind of note on here is the frequency by which to consume these things. So this is oftentimes where organizations kind of get tripped up, is they'll be looking at results. Either one, they'll be looking at it too soon before there's an opportunity for the precursor behavior to turn into results, or this is kind of the worst situation would be waiting for these results to manifest from a lagging indicator standpoint and like not being proactively on top of it. That's the worst case scenario, because 90 days later, like, oh, the results didn't show up. Gee whiz. I wish we had been looking at precursor indicators there. And so really what you want to do is like the precursors, ideally you're looking at it on a weekly basis. Right, a great place for that to show up is in team meetings, in uh, rep manager one-on-ones, and then the audience in that situation are kind of reps and managers. The results, you want to be looking at that, maybe every other week, right? This might be something that shows up in a sales leadership team meeting. One, you would want to be holding reps accountable to those results, but then also reporting that out to a leadership standpoint as well. And then the lag indicator, really the the cadence on which you would be looking at that would kind of be like on a monthly basis there, and that's in sales leadership team meeting or what have you. Hey, how is the prospecting initiative going? Let's like we've been working on this for 30 days. What has those lagging indicators and like the totality of that looked at? Um, in general, that like you can do this, and a lot of like organizations have kind of like pieced together ways of doing this. It ends up being pretty difficult. What we have found with our customers is, our customers kind of led us to this, is that it ends up being much easier to do with something that is dedicated like Atrium. And I'll kind of talk a little bit about how that works. First and foremost, you obviously need to be able to have the relevant metrics in order to measure both the leading, intermediary, and then lagging indicators of a given initiative. And so one of the things that Atrium does really amazingly is it comes with 100 plus pre-baked metrics that work right out of the box. Takes about 5 minutes to set up through a read-only connection to your CRM. In our case, we work with Salesforce, and then your email and your calendar solution. And then importantly, what happens is organizations usually trick out and customize their metrics pretty substantially within Atrium. But the important thing is it's already ready out of the box. Is you don't really like have to. There's not a substantial lift in generating those metrics. But as we know, just generating the metrics is like not really the important thing. Like that's just table stakes, right? It's all about the consumption and interpretation. Um, and that's where Atrium shines in particular, because just having the data and the metrics is all well and good, and having them customized is great. But then what Atrium does is it statistically monitors all of those metrics for managers, reps, leaders, etc., in order to help those managers understand where there are areas for optimization, where there are reps who are really like falling down and falling on their face, so they can intervene. And those would be things like pacing towards goals, um, trends, comparison to peers, etc. And then really a big thing that is new to Atrium in the last 3 months or so is what we've done is we've layered an AI layer across all of that, that it then explains why those insights matter, and then specifically what to do next about it. And we call that sales coach. I'll show you a little bit of what that looks like here in a second. But like this is really critical, because it's one thing for Atrium to tell you, as we were saying earlier, hey, this rep is light on their customer facing call behavior. That's actually like statistically deriving that for me, pretty helpful in and of itself, because I didn't have to look at a chart in order to figure that out. Like it was done statistically for me. But then something explaining it to me and say, hey, and these are potentially the reasons why this rep might not be calling, and here's some recommendations of what to do next about that. Here's like the coaching actions to take place, or maybe the coaching communications to send to this rep, or the enablement program to deploy to help this rep. That changes the game very substantially. And then of course the way that you do this is through all manner of views in Atrium. And so what the way that we kind of describe Atrium is as an AI-driven sales effectiveness platforms that helps organizations move that pipeline more consistently through kind of those two things. One, making sure that teams are doing the sufficient quantity and quality of work necessary to generate and move that pipeline along, and then ensuring that managers are following the same playbook, um, to make sure that they are actually managing, and they're managing effectively. And so at the second level of detail around how Atrium does that to help organizations measure and manage the quantity and quality of selling activity. Really what that comes down to is kind of four big buckets, if you will. One, pure activity, things like customer facing meeting volume, email volume, the calling volume, all the sort of like behaviors, right? And then then next we have like the outputs of that. So pipeline creation is something that comes out of activity, obviously, but you can also have activity without pipeline creation. And that's a bad situation as well. So that's why it's very important to make sure that we're measuring that, making sure that once that pipeline is actually being created, it's being worked, right? Because you can have a bunch of pipeline that's in the CRM, and looks really great in your forecast, but if it turns out that 50% of it hasn't, moved a stage in more than 60 days, or 30% of it hasn't had a touch in 30 days, and like is really, really unhygienic, guess what? That's not real pipeline, right? And so that's why, it's activity is necessary but not sufficient, and pipeline creation is necessary but not sufficient, and hygiene is necessary but not sufficient. And then importantly, we want to make sure that that pipeline is moving along, right? So like we can have a bunch of pipeline that we've created that reps are working very well, but like for whatever reason, gosh darn, it's all stuck at stage 2, right? And so this is actually a really important thing, to make sure that we're making sure that those ops are moving along from stage to stage to stage on a per rep basis, and that the pipeline, which of course is just the summation of all those opportunities, is moving along as well. And so by measuring, right, the quantity and quality of these 4 things, it helps sales organizations really have an eye at a rep level, at a manager level, and at a leadership level of, are we doing sufficient quantity and quality of selling to like put ourselves in a good position. And of course, the mechanism by which you do that is management. And so it's one thing to have these metrics that are in place, but you have to monitor them and then performance management based on that. And so, mechanisms by which Atrium does that is monitoring, progress on, like, achievement of and progress of goals, on any of these KPI types here, helping managers performance manage on those goals and those metrics, um, making sure that new reps are ramping appropriately, again, primarily by measuring their progress on these various metrics in line with their ramp kind of quotas, but not just from a booking standpoint, booking quota, but a ramp quota of customer facing meetings or new opportunity inflow or pipe build or any manner of activities. And then lastly, the AI driven sales coaching that kind of layers, across all of that. And so the idea here is that what we want managers to be able to do, and what Atrium is really focused on for managers, is kind of keeping them up here, right? Having them spend their time in these upper levels of what we call Maslow's hierarchy of data-driven sales management excellence, um, because that's where we change rep behavior for the better, which is literally the goal of sales management, right? Like, we're not here to be the rep's friend. We're not here to close the deals for them. We are here to measure them and manage them and monitor their performance, so we can improve that performance and drive better outcomes, and make them more performant. And of course, the challenge here is that getting to this very, very like high level here, ends up being tough. And this was something, I mean, honestly, this is something that we kind of found, um, through our work with customers at Atrium, that we were getting folks to this, like, these upper levels, but managers were still really struggling around how to diagnose, and then communicate those issues for resolution. Like, Atrium was doing a great job of helping them understand that somebody was having an insufficient amount of customer facing meeting activity, or that there was like something was left to be desired in their pipeline hygiene or what have you, but we weren't yet doing a great job of helping them say, okay, so what, and then now what do with that. And so that's where our new sales coach functionality comes in, which is a AI driven sales management assistant, that provides recommend synthesis and then recommendation on what to synthesis of performance metrics, and then recommendations on what to do about this. And I'll kind of show you what this looks like in practice. I have a little GIF here, but actually, maybe actually Eduardo can drop a link to the sales coach blog post into the chat, because it has other animated GIFs on there that I kind of like a little bit better than this one. But what you can kind of see here is this is a pretty simplistic example of sales coach. On the left here, what you've got is an Atrium KPI, specifically an Atrium, what we call an alert or an anomaly, where Atrium is flagging that this rep right here has 68% fewer meetings on the calendar than he usually does at this point in the quarter. So it's something that's like, oh, okay, yikes. Um, but that in and of itself may not be sufficient. And so what Sales Coach does is it, as you can kind of see here, is it's providing a recommended plan of action kind of based on like, oh, okay, maybe there's an opportunity for us to do more prospecting here. Maybe there's an opportunity to liaise this rep with other reps in the organization, so on and so forth. And so this is just with a single metric here. But Sales Coach does this for the totality of metrics for a given rep. In fact, it will also do it across the entirety of a team as well. So the way to kind of think about it is like a little AI synthesis and recommendation helper for those managers, and also reps, because it talks to the reps directly as well, but specifically to help them ensure that they are managing so no one's getting stuck. Like, oh, okay, cool, this rep's got a decline in customer facing meeting volume, or this rep's got is light with respect to their calling volume. Gee whiz, what should I do about it? I don't know. I'm just gonna bury my head in the sand. Instead, what we would seek to do is say, hey, here's an issue. Here's the reason, some of the ideas around why that might be an issue, and then here are some things to potentially take action to resolve it. So that's the end of the little Atrium AI commercial there. So in summary for folks, really, like, when you're thinking about standardizing your sales management playbook, what you want to make sure that you're doing with your managers is really helping them spend their time in these upper parts of the hierarchy of data-driven sales management excellence. But we can't just rely on them to do that artisanally. They're not just gonna it is a losing proposition to pretend that your managers are going to be able to figure this out on their own. Instead, as leaders, as CROs, VPs of sales, and heads of enablement and heads of sales operations, it's our job to give them the recipe book. Or we can't just give them the raw ingredients and like point them at the fridge and say, figure it out. Instead, it's our responsibility to provide them with the recipe book, and specifically the menu that they should be working through there. And so what that means is making sure that your playbook includes things like goal monitoring, performance management, sales coaching, A, and then B, that is broken up across your operating rhythm, and that there's places on the calendar in order for those places, or for those sales management actions to be done, right? And so this is a general playbook, right? So an operating rhythm with a set of meetings and the content of that, and then the actions, like the managerial actions that then happen within that operating rhythm. If you do that thing, and I like the metaphor of a menu, right? Or like, it's not just a menu, but like it's like a prefix menu, right? Like you can't just choose. It's like, here's the courses that are coming out, right? Here are the courses that are coming out, and then specifically the recipes by which to produce those courses. If you create that for your managers, your 5, 10, 20, 50 managers, you will have a far more consistent and better management than if you kind of leave it up to them on their own. So that's a little bit on sales management playbooks. Again, if you are interested in learning a little bit more about how large organizations, how modern sales organizations use Atrium to help embed a culture of data-driven sales management and embed a sales management playbook across their SDR and AE teams, along with kind of AI-driven effectiveness help for those managers. We'd love to tell you a little bit more about that, show you how the AI sales coach works and how also just the Atrium's core metrics engine works as well. And as a thank you for your time, we'd love to hook you up with a set of noise canceling Bose headphones there. So that's what we had to cover here today. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here. And I think Eduardo is going to kick me out. Eduardo, anything else for us to cover?
No, that was fantastic. You're pretty you cover everything. I have some comments in the chat. Geoffrey loved the analogy of the prefix menu. Maggie said, pipeline hygiene, such an ongoing struggle at my company.
Always
Yep.
the worst.
Right? Adrian can help. So we're going to wrap things up here. But first, I want to say thank you, audience, for joining us today in this Wednesday that feels like a Friday. And also thank you to the wonderful Atrium for making this event possible. And P, thank you so much for providing this great content. The presentation was fantastic. Audience, once again, the recording will be available in the MSP website shortly, and you will also receive a follow-up email from me. So look up for an email from me on your inbox. And don't forget to check out the upcoming events that Modern Sales Pros is hosting this year and this month. Pete, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy New York City. Audience, I'll see you next time.
Okay. Thanks, Eduardo. Bye, guys.
Bye bye.